Hey, Al, Erin, great to connect today for the Coach's Corner. I'm excited because I've been actually asking Al to do this for about 5 years. And Erin, I'm glad you've asked this question because he's managed to come. He's managed to come on video. It took, all I needed to do was find you, and then Al's going to join and do this seminar or this.
Sorry, can I just say one thing?
Yeah.
I'm not that hard to get hold of. That's unfair.
I'm just exaggerating a little bit, but we're going to be discussing business structures and business partnerships, and I'm going to introduce Erin. Erin's just started up a business herself. I won't go into details. I'll let Erin kind of elaborate on that and ask any questions, and I'll jump in here and there and ask our questions too that I've been waiting to ask.
Okay.
Over to you, Erin.
So my name is Erin. I live in Canberra, and about 6 months ago, I started an activewear brand. I'm a Pilates instructor, and I saw how much the health and fitness arena was booming in terms of clothing. And I also saw a gap in the market for more vibrant, fun clothing. Going back years and years and years, I used to want to be a fashion designer or a shop owner. And then once I became a Pilates instructor, I thought I could combine the two. So I kind of just went for it. I didn't overthink it. I'm a single mum. There were risks involved for me, but I feel so passionately about it, and I'm really glad I took that leap of faith. And I'm now at a stage in my life of the business that I'm ready to start making stepping stones to the next path.
Brilliant.
And that's where Harsha comes in.
Yep. Great.
Yeah.
Great. Thanks, Erin. Al, I might get you to just do a little bit of an intro because this will go out on the web and people will be going, who's this Al that we're talking about and where's he popped out from? So perhaps you can just provide a little bit of background about yourself, and then we'll get stuck into some questions.
All right. Well, I'll aim to keep it relevant to this conversation. So my name's Alister Mcdonald. I currently rent a place in Tweed Heads and regularly am in Sydney, Canberra, and Melbourne, and occasionally overseas. So what I've done, and this was really helped by the lockdowns in Melbourne. I was in Melbourne through all the lockdowns. I can largely do what I do anywhere in the world as long as I have an internet connection. And what I've been doing for the last nearly 25 years is starting and operating my own businesses with a business partner or with business partners. So, I've got a Bachelor of Arts in Music and I've got a graduate diploma in Computer Science. So neither of those really prepared me for business. And a bit like Erin has said earlier, I didn't overthink it. I just got into it. And effectively burnt about $250,000 before I learned how to operate a business, or with my business partner before we learned how to operate businesses in a professional and effective way. So we call that our street MBA. We put the money out there and learn the hard way. So these days I'm a shareholder in a couple of those businesses. I don't work in the bigger one of those. I'm about to go back into our real estate business and sell real estate, residential real estate. I've done that in the past. Where I've developed my strengths, I'm a jack of all trades, master of none. So over the years, I've been our administrator, our financial controller, and I've learned through operating the business how to, have business administration. I've also learned the basics of marketing, of managing people and all of those other things that you need to be successful in business. And then probably beneath all of that, asking anyone around me, and they'll roll their eyes and say, I just coach people all the time. So I'm always, without being asked, coaching people. So I effectively started as a business coach back in 2016. And funnily enough, it was because people were asking me questions like this one and saying, when are you gonna show us? So hopefully that is enough to give a background about me.
Thanks, Al. Yeah, that was good to for you to share that. So what we might do is, Erin, I know as you're expanding or not growing your business, starting your business, you're thinking about different structures and partnerships and getting other people involved. What kind of questions do you have? I've got a whole list of questions here, but I'd be interested to know what your questions are.
See, I've got questions around my questions, if that makes sense. So my questions are quite broad. So I obviously have limitations in my skills and a sort of a fairly tight budget. And so if I start thinking about options, one of them being bringing someone else on board, because I've had a friend who said he potentially wants to invest, what would be the best pathways that I could do that without letting too much of my creative ownership go, I guess? Because at the moment I make all decisions, the buck ends with me. If I make a mistake, that's on me. And I guess as soon as you start to bring more people on board, it changes the dynamic of a business. And then I guess I'd like to know advantages and disadvantages to doing, like, I'm a sole trader at the moment. There's obviously lots of other options in terms of partnerships, Pty Ltd. So I guess my question is a fairly broad one.
Sure. Well, let's address some of the basic ones and see where we go. And I'm going to just say this up front, Erin, there's 3 hats that I can wear, maybe more, but fundamentally I can be a coach, I can be a mentor, I can be a consultant. So if we were to go into the coaching space right now, I'd start asking you lots of questions and facilitate you discovering answers for yourself. I think it's fair to say that's not what you're up for in this conversation. Is that fair?
Yeah.
Okay, good. But I just want to be clear about that because it's something that I've become really clear about over the last few years. So then if I go with the, I don't know, consultant or mentor hat, take your pick, then let's start with first your choice about how to expand.
Yeah.
Because you're faced with that right now. And the 2 questions that I heard there were what structure and what people.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, great. So I always advocate keeping things as simple as possible. And business really is simple. So first of all, do you want to work with other people?
Yes, because I have limitations, like I said, in my skills or connections. So I realize that I can't be everything and do everything. And that's okay, but I'm fairly choosy about who that would be.
Yeah.
And my friend is one of them, Jay is his name, and Harsha is the other. So not many people, well, I mean, I don't trust everyone sharing my vision, but, there are certain people that I do.
Great. Okay, great. So, your answer is similar to mine 20-odd years ago. I have a business partner because I certainly didn't feel I could do it on my own, but I actually didn't want it.
Right.
What I now know is you can do it on your own if you want to. And there are plenty of entrepreneurs out there that do. Now, they have a team, but they remain the brand.
Yep.
So, great. So your preference is to effectively be in partnership, however it's structured.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
Because as you know, now more than ever, you can go out to what we call the gig economy and have anyone do anything for you, actually at a reasonable price and a reasonable quality.
Right.
So you could be a solopreneur, as we call it, and have other people do stuff for you without giving much up, if you choose.
Yeah. Yep.
And Harsh is getting better and better. He's very good at that now, and he's just getting better and better at doing that,
Okay.
Building and managing his team. So, okay, great. So you want to do that. Then if we go the next step is how do you juggle values, friendship, business relationship, finance, how do you juggle all those things? Yeah.
Well, the thing that scares me, and I think I've mentioned this to Harsha before, when I went to make my biggest purchase for stock, what made me click the button was, this is my passion project. I'm happy to take the risk.
Yep.
And I guess the downside to when you start to bring people on board is you start to feel responsible for their, if the things go pear-shaped, it's not just me, it's on other people as well.
Yep. Great.
Yeah.
So then, and that's great you say that. So that's fundamentally something that you're going to want to really take on. And what I mean by that is either just give it up and say, for me to ask for money, I'm not always going to give the result that they expect.
Right.
I was careful what I said there because you can always give the result that you promise. You can do that.
Mm-hmm.
No matter what, you can do that.
Okay.
And so I'm going to advocate you look at that as, first of all, only ever promise what you want to deliver on.
Yeah.
And then deliver on it.
Right. Okay. Okay.
And I know that sounds like it's a little bit, or it seems like it's a little bit questionable at your end right now.
Yeah.
And that's fine.
Yeah.
I'm asking you just to look at that right now. And if you look out in the world, you're going to see, sure, there's some business people that aren't like that. They don't care what comes out of their mouth. They don't care what they deliver. Absolutely.
Right.
However, the ones I would say that are successful and with a level of peace and quality of life are the ones that are like that.
Right. Right.
And I can share a bunch of stories, but I won't do that now. If you want to do it another time, we can do that another time.
Yeah.
But suffice to say, it's something you want to look into. Now, beyond that, then I'm going to say it's a business, yeah?
Yep.
Yeah. So in a business, you have investors, you have lenders, you have all those people, and you have an agreement, and you either fulfill on that, you fulfill on that agreement by hook or by crook. So you either deliver what you promise or you fail and go bankrupt, whatever the agreement says.
Yep.
And so wherever you get to in your discovery about, borrowing money or having investors or, you're giving your word and all that stuff, at the end of the day, if you have simple, clear agreements and they have a, let's call it, worst case for your investor or lender, well, they go in with their eyes open and they make that choice. It's not on you anymore. What's on you is to deliver what you said you're going to deliver, no more.
Right. So I guess it's on me to manage expectations. I mean, I sway between, oh, this is going to fail, to I'm going to be a millionaire. Like, there's nothing in between with me. I'm sort of, depends on how I feel on one particular day. I feel hopeful and I think this is going to go really well. And then the next day I think I should just cut my losses and go home.
So, Erin, you have just passed the human being test. You are a bona fide, dyed-in-the-wool human being. Well done.
Good.
Yeah.
Can I just add that's probably something that you go through every day. Every day. Probably anyone in business, and that's just you wake up.
Normal.
No, it's actually that just shows you're normal.
Well, to put it another way, Erin, I'm going to say to you, if you go and look back at your life for moments where you didn't feel that way, you're probably living very comfortably and not challenging yourself very much.
That's very true. Very true.
And that's it. So our level of discomfort is a direct result of how much we challenge ourselves. And that's it. Again, it's a choice. Yep. Some people, go to school, get a profession, go into a job, do that job for 40 years, retire, do whatever they do, and they're satisfied with that.
Yep.
And they seem that for them it's comfortable,
Right.
I think that world's kind of gone, but you get my drift. For our parents, it was kind of like that. So that's fine. And just to address that, the thing to do is to find structures to support you and your mindset and your emotional health and so on.
Right. Okay.
So I do personal development, and you know what? Without that, I would have killed myself 10 times by now. Like, it's that simple.
Yeah.
I just would have given up and drowned myself or something.
Right.
Because I'm also one of those people that I look out in the world and I see what's not working and I get miserable.
Yeah.
So personal development is what keeps me in action, out in the world with other people, not in here, not focused on what doesn't work, but focused on what's possible.
Right. I mean, I walked away from an insurance broker job where I was making pretty good money, but it never felt right. I never felt challenged. I was giving up so many hours of my day to make somebody else wealthy. And so while there are days of discomfort or worry now, I also have days of great fulfillment. And it's all worth that.
Fantastic. Great working. And a fundamental there that I'm suspecting you've done, but just just like you always did, manage your finances, manage everything to manage any risk that's there.
Right.
In our largest business, it's evolved a little bit, but it started as a project management firm in the telecommunications space. So Telstra was our biggest customer. And when we started, we had casual employees or contractors. When we had financial stability, we went to all of them and offered them a full-time job. We didn't require it, but we offered it for those that wanted it. And I remember one guy that joined us, he would never hold down a job for more than, like, 2 years was the absolute max he would work anywhere. He changes his car every year or two. He stayed with the same wife, good on him, but he changes everything else every year or two.
Right.
And he stayed with us for more than a decade. And it was funny because what he said when he joined us, he said, the difference between being an employee and a contractor is about 4 weeks.
Okay.
And that's until you hit 7 years, where long service leave starts. That's more or less the truth. So and these days there is a false sense of security, I think, in holding down a job. I don't know that there's a lot of security out there these days myself.
Everything's shifted in the last few years, and I mean, there's talk about moving to the 4-day week now as well.
About time.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Okay, so we've looked at some of those basics. Like, are you feeling like you've got enough to go on with? It sounds like you're clear. You want to work with other people. Have you got enough to go on to start the conversations with potential partners, openly?
Yeah, well, I mean, what I've been working on this week is numbers. If I was to bring on an investor or a partner, they're going to want to see numbers.
Exactly.
So I've been working on that this week.
Yeah, great. And that's all part of that agreement, right? So the agreement might say you will receive, profit and loss, balance sheet, cash flow, whatever you're going to offer on a monthly basis or quarterly basis, or whatever you want to commit to. And and then we'll have a quarterly management meeting where I address how I'm going strategically, what's happened, what's coming up, So all of those things will be in the agreement, so they've got as much visibility as they want.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I mean, the other thing I need to do, which is a business plan, which I know is the first thing you're meant to do, and it's all up here in my head, but I know that's not good enough when you put a proposal forward to somebody. So that's also what I need to focus on this week as well.
Right. Good. And you're right to a degree. So the business plan is one of the things on the list that people tick, and occasionally they even read them. So most people create a plan and then put it in the drawer and never look at it again.
Right.
So the two things I want to offer you there is there's a thing called a Silicon Valley pitch deck. I think it's the Silicon Valley pitch deck.
Okay.
Or it's the 10-20-30 pitch deck.
Mm-hmm.
10-20-30 slide deck. Something like that.
Okay.
So it's 10 slides, 20-point font, and no more than 30 dot points. I think that's how it's structured.
Okay.
So we were shown this by guys, Australians that had been in Silicon Valley pitching for a decade. And they said, anyone that's putting any money into anything, that's all they want to see up front.
Okay.
So look that up. What I tend to do, because I don't even like PowerPoint at all, what I tend to do is just 2 pages max.
Right.
At the high level. Why? Because to get a sense of what you're about and where you're going, high level is all people need.
Yeah.
And people that are successful and have money usually don't have a lot of time, and they don't want to waste time reading unnecessary information. So if you can grab someone with your first couple of pages, then you might have to then show your financial model, your marketing plan, all that other stuff. And again, I go top down. It's always iterative. Dot points at the business plan level, then dot point market plan, dot point whatever customer acquisition, whatever your plans are.
Okay.
Because really, you don't need an essay. You won't read it again. No one else wants to read it. It's too hard to reword.
Text, do they? As soon as you get text, you just start to blur out. So yeah.
I'll just jump in there. So Erin's already made some efforts towards that with the lean canvas. So I think that will probably support.
Great.
And what you just mentioned the pitch deck that might feed in quite well, that you can kind of prepare that.
Yeah, so
For
the
sure.
lean canvas is that exactly. I forgot about the lean canvas. So my business partner does that one. So I keep that out of mind. I don't bother with that. But that's a beautiful thing to get expressions of interest.
Okay.
You know?
Well, I wouldn't have even heard the term lean canvas, but Harsha was the one who sent it all through, and together we worked on it. And that gave me some real clear visions of where I was heading.
Yeah. So that's why. So Adam, what's happened is our business went into a much more entrepreneurial space. We still do the project management, but we went to a more entrepreneurial space, and a whole lot of things like that lean canvas sort of came into that. They all got trained in that stuff.
Right.
So anytime we're looking at a new business now, we do that first. So thanks,
Okay.
Harsha.
No worries.
And that's another answer which I could, because again, I just don't do that. Like the pitch deck, you go out using the usual search engines and look for, what are the tools what are the reports that investors like to see, or what are the presentations. Just look for what you're looking for, and you'll find what everybody's using right now.
Yeah. Okay. Yep.
Or ask us.
So can I just jump in there and just ask
Yeah.
just do a little bit of deep dive in one of the questions that you asked.
Yep.
So if someone approaches Erin and says, I'd like to invest in your business, what can you offer? What do we go towards a profit share? Do we go towards equity? Do we what's the difference? And what's a good way to manage that and agree, I guess, form an agreement? Can
you also just jot a note out, Harsha? We ought to address personalities, values, and that sort of thing, because that's actually critical.
Okay. Yeah.
So let's come back to that later. Yeah, look, again, it's really simple, right? Everything's by agreement. And if you want to retain control of your entity and you have an investor that wants control, then they're not for you. It's that simple. Doesn't matter what they're on. Now, and look, you'll hear stories about people who gave up the controlling interest and then got done out of their own business. You'll hear stories about people that invested, didn't have controlling interest and got done out of their money. There's no right or wrong way. You just do what's right for you and find the people that will work with you. Then I'll just give an example. So in our business is now called 460 Degrees. It's had a couple of different names, but I'll just use that name. So in that business, when we first started and we first brought on, we moved people from contract to permanent, one of the things we knew they'd be concerned about was, we have to take a pay cut to be permanent. We said, no. We structured it so they had a retainer, which was lower, but they didn't even have to work a full year to get that retainer. So we had it all modeled, right? So whatever the number of days were they worked, they would get their retainer. Then if they took no leave, they would earn, I think it was a couple of grand more than as a contractor. So we were incentivizing them to turn up to work every day and then get paid more. Now, we then went layers above that, right? For those that were into business development, we offered them two pathways. Either they could become, I think it was an associate, I can't remember the terms now, but they were like leader number one. They could go out and introduce us to business or even win business and get a percentage of whatever was generated.
Right.
That was just direct. Next level was we called partner. It wasn't a legal partnership like the professional firms, but we just called them a partner. They were offered a shareholding at a discounted price. They bought that. In many cases, we either loaned them the money to buy that with interest, or we took it out of their bonuses to pay for it. So it was easy for them to do. And those guys then got a percentage of profit, a percentage of every employee that they had in their team. It was like they were running their own little business in our business.
Right.
So there we covered it all, right? We covered revenue share, profit share, ownership, margin share, call it what you will. So there's so many ways to cut it. And ownership is definitely one you only want to offer. You want to offer really rigorously.
Okay.
Not because you're giving something up. I wouldn't be afraid of that. As you'll hear this saying a lot, right? 100% of nothing is worth a lot less than 1% of a lot.
Yeah.
No?
Yeah.
So, retaining the potential profits, I'm not saying it's not something to consider, but it's not the primary concern. The primary concern is, are you going to get through the stages of business successfully and win? And what's it going to take to do that? And what are you prepared to do that?
Right.
And just by the by, who do you believe in your industry is one of the highest performers that you could go and learn about and emulate?
For me?
Yep.
I mean, when I looked at other activewear brands, it's so funny. If you'd asked me this 2 days ago, I would have named PE Nation,
right,
and Lululemon.
Yep.
Now, in the last 2 days, there's been word on the street that they're both about to sink.
Interesting.
Very interesting. So, not sink, but there's trouble.
Okay.
But that's certainly brands that I would look up to.
So, and who knows if that's true or not. I would have recommended Lululemon now, even if they sink. They're a multi-tens of billions of dollars company.
Right.
You get there and then sell out. You don't care if it sinks, right?
Right.
So right. The thing is, to go from nothing to where they've gotten to, they did it really well.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it just happens that they bring personal development into their workspace as well. That's how I know a bit more about them.
Okay.
So, but it doesn't matter what I think. At the end of the day, though, focus on, you're a startup. So who's going to give you the most? Who's going to give you the best model as a startup, rather than where they're at now?
Right. Okay. Just another quick question that occurred to me. I had some questions from this person who's potentially looking to invest.
Yep.
He's asked for sort of, what do you value your business at? And to me, because I'm not an accountant or number person,
yep,
I don't even know where to start with something like that. Do you just go by stock or your time? What do you do?
Yeah, and again, there's effectively infinite numbers of ways of doing that when you don't have a lot of value.
Right.
So classically, once a business is, a demonstrable business, like you can say, I'm in business and I'm doing tax returns and paying tax, then fundamentally you'll get a multiple of profits. That's it.
Right. Okay.
And then as you grow, the multiple increases.
Okay.
And depending on your business model, it might be revenue rather than profits.
Right. Okay.
So there's some variations, but essentially it's going to be a multiple of what you're generating.
Yeah, well, I mean, the way that I've started from the ground up is to, first of all, just work out how much I've put in stock and what that retail value of the stock is.
Yep.
But then on top of that, there's things like all the other associated costs, and on top of that, all my time and my vision.
Right. So that's right. So the other extreme is that you price everything to the max, and you want to value your business at $500,000 when you've generated $1,000 worth of sales. That's kind of the other extreme to what I just explained, right? So what I would advocate is that you do exactly what you just said. So look at every cost you've sunk into that business, and your time is a cost.
Yep.
And again, you can value your time any way you like, but the fairest way is going to be well, what's the CEO in my industry worth? Right.
Okay.
That's the fairest way to value it. So now that you then come up with, well, here's the cost-based value of this business. Now, that's a starting point, right? In any negotiation, that's a starting point.
Yeah. Okay.
But I would advocate that's the reasonable place to go right now.
Yeah. Cool. Okay.
And then again, if you look at it, what you could do to protect everybody to a degree is to say, well, look, let's structure it this way. I've got a business plan that says in 2 years, I'm going to be generating $500,000 of revenue, and 100,000 of profit. I'm just making numbers up, right?
Yep.
So at that point, we're going to say that it's instantly worth, 300 grand, and then whatever the business plan says, it might be worth more.
Right.
It's a proven business now. So, and just at a small level, multiples typically around about 3 times. Profit.
Yeah. Okay.
So, and there's some other factors, but that's a fundamental rule of thumb. So, what you could do is say, well, look, I want to value it based on 3 years from now.
Mm-hmm.
But what we're going to do is you're going to loan me the amount,
Yep.
principal and interest, and then we can agree to convert that to equity annually as I prove my business model, as an example.
Okay. That's certainly given me some better idea of how to do this. And I'm lucky in the way that I've got a lot of trust in this person that's come forward and wants to invest.
Yep.
And the other bonus with him is because he's done quite well for himself, I get a lot of mentorship through that as well.
Yeah, which is great.
Yeah, definitely. Did you have Asha that you wanted to ask?
Yeah, so that just off that last point, Al, you mentioned every year review it and convert into equity. What did you mean by that? Is that so Erin can kind of, form that working relationship and then see how it goes? Is that, or is it more just to prove how the business goes?
So the investor comes along and says, your business is worth nothing because you haven't made any sales. So, basically whatever I lend you, I'm going to own it and you're going to have options, just to use an extreme.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So then the other extreme being, well, in 3 years it'll be worth this much. That's how much I want to value it at.
Right.
So everybody's, in there standing where they're standing. And look, fair enough. It's Erin's idea. Erin's put the sweat in. Erin's put the money in. That's worth something. But, there's a saying, money walks and bullshit. I've only ever done something. I'm just being straight about it. No, seriously, because what they're basically saying is your time's worth nothing, my money's worth everything. And that's just crap.
Yeah.
But that's how they are. That's how some of those people are, not all of them. So what I'm suggesting is to make it fair to everybody, you say, well, look, here's what I want to get for it, but I acknowledge it's not there yet. So let's do this hybrid model where you're lending me, which means I'm on the hook for that money. And if you can provide security, you can provide security. But rather than me paying you that money and interest, let's look to convert that to equity based on results, performance. And obviously the upside for them is whatever, they get a discount or whatever. You have a model that's fair to everybody, right?
Yeah. And how would you touched on personalities and values? If we can circle back to that, how does that come into it? And is that like, once you give equity, I guess you kind of form that legal connection as a business.
And look, Erin said the magic words that are the best and the worst, right? That she trusts someone.
Yeah.
And you can only start with people you trust. Problem is when trust is built on a one-dimensional relationship and then you make it a four-dimensional relationship, then that trust gets tested newly. So my business partner and I started day one, we just split everything 50-50. But as it turned out, I was able to borrow money from my family. So that $250,000 that we burnt was borrowed money from my family. So, and then he was good at generating the revenue. So it worked. He'd bring in the cash flow. I would provide the capital that we needed. So we just agreed 50-50. Now, a few years ago, I said it's time we separate that, because he wants to continue living at an ever-increasing high level. He wants to keep growing his income, growing his lifestyle. I'm satisfied with a much simpler lifestyle. So it didn't make sense to generate this ridiculous amount of cash when I did not need as much as he needed. So now we're evolving that, right? But we have maintained the trust. And although we've had a few run-ins, we've maintained it. Now, we've been fortunate. So one of the things we did where we discovered a potential secret to our success, we did a profiling test. And the one we did that verified we are a perfect match is called Wealth Dynamics.
Yep. And Erin, if you haven't touched on that, I was actually at Al's office in Melbourne doing this, did it. I was reading it and I got goosebumps. I'm just like, it was like raining outside, looking at this, 20-page document going, oh my God, how have they figured me out to a team with 20 or I don't know, it was 25 questions. So definitely worth. I think it's about $100 US to do, but definitely worth.
Okay. What was it called? Sorry.
Wealth Dynamics.
Okay.
Yeah, by a gentleman called Roger Hamilton.
I'll find the link and share it right now. So now that doesn't tell you about trust or anything else, but it tells you about your compatibility as entrepreneurs.
Okay.
So good help.
For sure, because even if you pick, it's like when you go on a holiday with someone, even your best friend, by the end of the holiday, you can't stand the sight of each other. You just don't know until you're in the thick of some certain situations.
100%.
Yeah.
And I'm, after a 25-year relationship, a 3-year relationship, I'm single. After whatever relationship you've had, you're single. Same as human beings.
Yeah.
And that's the next bit I want to come on to. So this is loading. My internet's gone slow. So the fundamental that's kept together is we agreed to stay together. Now, I know it's not that simple, right? But we agreed to that, and I'm just putting the link in the chat now. We agreed to that, and we talked about it. We kept revisiting it. We kept it strong. And there was a moment in 2014 where I did hit the bottom of the barrel. Like, that was just before I ended my 25-year relationship, and I wanted to kill myself. Like, that's where I was at in 2014. Like, we were successful by then. Life was actually going pretty well, but I hated myself and I hated my life. And the first thing he did, because I hid it all from him until late in the piece, and the first thing he did was say, right, as a friend, do you just need to walk away from all this right now? So he offered that first. And then and I said, no, I don't need to do that, but I do need to shake it up. And so he supported me to do that. And then lo and behold, 5 years later, 6 years later, he did exactly the same thing.
Right.
Now, he's not as dramatic as I am. I don't know that everyone killed himself, but he shook his life up in a similar way, and I supported him.
Okay.
So it takes work. And we continually, over the 25 years, have explored what's working in our relationship and what's not working in our relationship. But fundamentally, our wealth dynamics profiles are the perfect match, and I believe that's contributed.
Okay. That's really interesting. I'll look at that link after the phone call.
Yeah. Right.
Yep.
So, the other, and look, again, just search for tests, business partner tests, partnership tests, just do as much as you can.
Mm-hmm.
Because one of the things that we don't do it in any new relationship, is we don't look for the warts. We put on those nice soft filters to make the other person look beautiful, because we want it to work, and we put on our masks so we look as beautiful as possible because we want it to work.
Yep.
And I'm learning time and time again that we're better off just being as straight and open as we can and let it fail faster.
Yep. If I could, I'd just like to go back to a little bit to the value of a business when somebody question, and this is why I think I can trust Dale. He said to me the other day, like, if I said I threw a rough figure out of my value of $10,000. Now that doesn't include my time; it's just what I've put in.
Yep.
And he said, okay, well, if I was to go 25% ownership, that's only going to cost me $2,500.
Yep.
If in 3 years you're worth $500,000, I just got a bloody good deal.
Yep.
So that's I guess what confuses me. Well, then how do you put a percentage of your value? But then ask, that makes sense.
Well, no, sorry, I didn't spell it out enough. So go and get every cost that you've expended, right? Which, if you have a close look, is likely to be more than 10,000, even though I don't know your business, I suspect it's more. And then you look at every hour you've ever spent on it and value that as an executive and add that on.
Okay.
And then that's the value as a minimum, because that's got it's got no value on the idea. That's got no value on the risk. It's got no value on because how many products have you tried and failed and got to get it right? Like, it doesn't have any value on any of those things.
No, and I think I'd like to value my creative vision too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is that right?
So that's what I'm saying. Like, you've got to come up with values for all of that, and then you begin the negotiation, and that might include an upfront loan where it converts to equity as the value is proven.
Okay.
So you agree it's worth 200,000. So 25% is actually going to cost 50,000.
Okay.
But it's not worth that yet. So now he might say, okay, I'm prepared to take that risk. Great. But still be wary, not because there's something wrong with him, but just because every human being has a couple of things going on fundamentally. One is that we're always when the chips are down, we're trying to protect ourselves. And that might appear irrational to other people because they might not see a threat, but we see the threat, right? But then the other side of that coin is, like I was touching on earlier, we want to get along with people, so we're always kind of pretending to be this really nice, easygoing, etc. person.
Yeah.
Not having a bad day at all, right? But he's doing that right now because he wants this to work with you.
Yeah.
And it's not because he's a bad person, it's just because he's a human being again. And that's what human beings do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's and all I suggest is anytime you want to test anything that I'm saying about people, go back to your personal relationships because they're no different.
Yeah. Yep.
And if it was that simple, the person up front is the person I'm going to get later, then we'd never have a relationship fail.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
And again, there's nothing wrong with any of us.
Yeah.
It's just choices we make, and sometimes they do not work with the other person.
It's funny because whenever I, in the past, thought about investments or businesses, I never put that human spin on it. But it's so important, isn't it? People's personalities. You don't factor that into what you value a business or a partnership, but it's just as important as if it's a marriage or.
Adam and I are better partners than we were with our wives. That's right.
Right.
That's the truth.
And that's why it's lasted, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Did you have any more questions, Sasha?
So just on the business structures, and it's quite interesting talking about people's personalities because that has as humans this is how we operate, right? So we've got to definitely factor that in. But
just the other thing on that before we go to the structures, because we didn't quite get there. Once you've got an agreed value and an agreed methodology for the money going in, and again, we can talk long time about that. You're having regular reporting, regular meetings. The money goes in by agreement, so on and so forth. You have agreement on how you deal with breakdowns in relationship, etc. But it's going to be key once you say, "Yep, we're going to be in business together. Yep, we've got a value. Yep, we've got a mechanism." The key is, I kind of now say to anybody that I'm starting out with, let's have a clause at the bottom of every other clause. Let's have an agreement at the bottom of every other agreement, which is we never make each other wrong.
Okay. So
if we've got to separate, then let's agree to do that without destroying each other, without destroying the business, so that's, and always maintain that conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Now, again, we can explore this stuff a lot, but it's a tough one, right? Because we don't want to go into any relationship saying it's going to have problems. Let's be ready for that. We don't want to put that out there, but we want to be prepared for if it does happen. In the predictable circumstance that it does happen.
Yeah. So that realistic view of it.
Yeah. So I use the word predictable. Why? Because again, human beings. Just to use an example, I might suddenly get up, and again, I'm not putting this out there, but he might suddenly get a horrible disease and need all the money he can get to cure himself, and it's like, hey, Aaron, I need that money now.
Yeah.
I've got a person that has loaned me money. We were buying a property a few years ago. It's a good property, actually. It's cash flow positive, tax negative. It's beautifully structured, right? It was at a period where the banks were being stupid. We put in a 1,300-page application twice because we have family trust and all that stuff. And it got rejected. The broker says, I'm not going to do this anymore. In the end, to settle, I just went to someone I know, got $500,000, and we settled cash. We then went to a bank later and refinanced. Now they were prepared to refinance a settled property, right? But they only gave us some of the money and we then reinvested that somewhere else. So I now owe, or the three of us that own that property owe $500,000 to someone. Now they're looking at extracting that money to buy property, and I didn't predict the pandemic. I can't give them that money. Now
Right.
I'm looking to sell some property to release that money, but I can't right now. So I'm not a bad person. They're being generous and patient, but there's a whole lot of unpredictability in what happened.
Yep. Yep.
And I want to make good, but I just can't right now.
Yeah. Okay.
So even where it is all good, it might not be all good.
Yeah. Well, you never, I mean, anything can happen, right? Anything.
That's right.
Yep.
So, okay. So structures. We're ready to move to structures.
Yeah, we got about 10 minutes. So
This is actually quite simple, right? It's quite simple. So we've already addressed the question about whether you can do it on your own or not do it on your own. So then really you can't be a sole trader. So the only other structure that's left until you go into structures is partnership.
Yep.
Now, it's not recommended to be a sole trader or in a partnership, just because as a sole trader, everything that has your name to it is then cross-collateralized. The risk is shared amongst everything. So if you own a property, you own a business, you own a car, it's all the risk of all of it shared if you do all on your own. So it's the poorest, it's the cheapest and the poorest structure to use for business, in my personal opinion. Now, by the way, you do need to go for a professional to get professional advice, but I'm talking from the ground as an operator.
Okay.
Does that mean if they have, let's say they get into, they go and spend some money on a credit card and they can't pay it, are you, and that's not through the business?
You've jumped ahead. So as a sole trader, your risk is cross-collateralized.
Right. Okay.
Not talking about anyone else yet.
Okay.
So, and then you forget to pay your car insurance, you go out, you hit a kid on a bike, parents sue you, now your business, your property, everything's exposed.
Right.
Or your garment chokes a kid because they were doing something silly and they sue you and now your house and everything else is on the line. So sole trader, not recommended for business.
Okay.
Partnership is that next stage where other people are involved. The thing about that is it's a legal partnership. You are now, not only are you exposed to your own risk, you're exposed to all of their risk as well, as Harsha was starting down.
Okay.
And vice versa.
Yep.
So it's actually more risky than sole trader. So it doesn't make sense.
Okay.
It just doesn't make sense.
Mm-hmm.
But the fundamental, I actually don't understand it. My accountants advise to buy property personally for capital gains, relief. I don't agree with them because that's a future possibility. And, this whole property gaining thing is a bit of a myth to a degree anyway. So I'm not arguing with them. I've sometimes followed their advice, but as a business person, I prefer structures. The cost of setting up and maintaining a structure is in the same ballpark as doing your tax anyway.
Okay.
If you're spending, say, a couple of $1,000s a year on doing your taxes, well, even just having a company is only going to add a few $100s to that.
Right.
And setting it up, $1,000. It's not like you suddenly have to spend $100,000. It's not like that.
Yeah. Okay.
So to me, the small amount extra is worth the protection, the added protection. So as a company, you get all the protections, and the one significant drawback is you don't have options with your taxation management.
Okay.
So that's it. So a company is a great structure for a business.
Can you set up percentage of ownerships within a company?
Yes.
Okay.
And you can alter it any time.
Right. Okay.
And you can manage that without it being a capital gains event. So if you sell your shares to someone at a profit, you pay capital gains. If you just issue new shares, not necessarily a capital gains event.
Okay.
So company is an ideal structure for a business. However, it gives you no real options tax management. You pay a flat percentage of tax every year on whatever profits you have.
Okay. Yep. Okay.
Now, and I'm not going to go too deep in all this. Just going to give you the taster. So beyond that, you've then got the world of trusts, and I'm not going to go into all of them. The fundamental simple ones are unit trusts and what we call family trusts, but it's otherwise under discretionary trust. So unit trust is, there's 100 units. Someone owns 50 of them. Someone else owns 50 of them. You have equal ownership. Now, at the end of the year, every year, all profits are distributed by ownership to the beneficiaries. And
Okay.
then they deal with the tax ramifications.
Right. Okay.
Now, the drawback there is you cannot retain funds in the business because all profits have to be paid out. So again, another benefit of a company is once you pay the tax, you can retain the funds and reinvest in your business.
Okay.
Now, there's other solutions for all that, but just as a fundamental, right?
So if Erin owns 80%, I've got 10%, you got 10%, then the profits would be distributed according to those percentages.
They must be.
And then we would deal with that income through our own personal tax. Is that right?
That's right.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
So the only real difference, so it's like a company, right? You have a number of shares, you get that percentage dividend. You have a number of units, you get that percentage distribution. The main difference being company pays its tax, then it issues a franked dividend, so a tax paid dividend, versus a unit trust, which just flows the revenue through and you then deal with the tax.
So is it does it cost the same for an accountant to do a trust return? I don't know if there is a trust return.
The setup is slightly more expensive, and then the return costs similar. Yes.
Similar. Okay.
Okay.
So most managed funds are unit trusts. So members buy a certain number of units, and then they just get their share of the revenue every year.
Okay.
As an example. So the final then is the discretionary trust, aka family trust. What happens there is revenue comes in and you can distribute it how you choose with anyone listed in the trust deed as a beneficiary. So that can include family, it can include trusts, charities, it can include a bunch of different things.
Okay.
So if you want to share ownership of a company, then a family trust is not practical.
Okay.
Or a discretionary trust is typically not practical. Some professional services will run a services trust, which is a discretionary trust. But again, I don't think that's practical for you. So, just now there'll be a lot of questions, I know, but we don't want to make it too complicated at this stage. That's the fundamental framework. So realistically, it's either going to be a company or a unit trust for you. And I don't see why you'd go unit trust personally, because right now you're about to. So what we did is we started with companies. The other benefit of a trust is if you sell it for less than $5 or $6 million or whatever, you get capital gains relief. Whereas if it's a company, you get no capital gains relief.
Okay.
So what we did was we started with all companies. I used to just go to ASIC and set up the company myself so we could get that potential capital gains relief. But then they grew beyond that anyway, and we've never actually benefited from the unit trust structure. So I'm not saying it's bad, but we've never really benefited from the structure. So in my experience, in fact, what I'd advocate, and I'd advocate you take this to a professional, is set up your entity as a company, and then when you're starting to have money to deal with, set up your own family trust, which owns your shares.
Okay.
You just got to manage that though. So, because if the company's worth $1 million and you transfer $700,000 worth of shares to your trust, you pay tax on that transfer of value.
Okay.
So you sort of do that dance.
So what's the advantage of the trust owning the shares as opposed to Erin?
Okay. Well, so a company has a lot of protection of assets. Now it's almost 11:30, by the way.
Yeah. We'll finish up soon.
Can we all agree to go 5 more minutes? Is that okay?
Yep.
I'm good.
All right, okay, let's wrap up. So the company gives you most of the benefits of protection. The family trust kind of goes another level because you never own anything. In a company, you're owning shares, so someone could still challenge your ownership of the shares. There's still more risk there. In a family trust, you don't own anything. You are a beneficiary, and the trustee of that trust must manage the assets to your benefit and all the beneficiaries that benefit. Right. So they cannot risk those assets.
Mm-hmm.
So it gives you, nominally it gives you the highest level of asset protection. Now, there are other trust structures, which I won't go into, that let's say this: the wealthier people are, the more intricate structures they use.
Okay.
Well, because they just know. So
Yeah.
Kerry Packer is on the record as saying something along the lines of only a dickhead would pay more than 30 cents on the dollar tax, because there's structures where you don't have to do that.
He would know, wouldn't he?
You would. Well, so there's a whole nother conversation we can have, Erin, about what tax really is, but let's not have that right now.
Yep.
Suffice to say, it's not fair to you or me or any other human being.
Yeah.
It's not.
Yeah.
And I'm not advocating anyone do anything with that other than look at it, but it's not actually fair or just.
Right.
So I think we've delved into a lot of things. Sorry, Erin, I'll let you.
It's just really helpful because when I started this, and even up until fairly recently, I just keep thinking, well, I'm just little old me. I'll stay as a sole trader. But there's just so much more to it. And to think long term, I don't want to make mistakes now that in 3 years' time, me will go, why did you do that? Why didn't you think of that? Why didn't you plan ahead for this? So this has been really helpful. Great.
Awesome. Do you use an accountant right now?
No. If you know one, let me know.
So I know one that I can wholly promote because they do the right thing.
Okay.
So I'm in the world of always pushing the envelope and finding the ways to do the wrong thing. And I'm just being straight about that.
Yep.
I believe any genuine entrepreneur would. But I then have a professional accountant that keeps me honest, keeps me in integrity with the law.
Okay. That's what I need.
Yeah, well, they're great. So I can should I say it on the recording? Oh no, we should keep it as a private referral.
All right.
So
I don't have a problem. I think it's good.
No, I'll keep it a private referral. So that's when you stop recording, I'll let everyone know.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll start. Look, thanks for coming today, Al and Erin, for letting us record this, and I'll certainly be sharing this with everyone out there when you see it. So yeah, I'm going to stop the recording now.